Sean Hart with Carliner Company. I'm the Director of Technical Services. We're here at AASP, the Northeast Show, and we're going to be here this morning with Larry Montanez talking about triage and estimating damage on collision vehicles.
Triage is a French word. It's a noun. It basically comes down to is you want to sort out or separate out the type of damages that are there. You want to also assign the order of urgency or the degrees of urgency of how bad the car has to be repaired. Some of you guys might hear catchphrases now like fast track or structural repair. If it's a fast track car, I know I can get it out in 2 days. I'm just changing a bumper cover, a headlight, maybe a fender, and painting it. I have an idea beforehand. And decide how you're going to treat the vehicle. Triage process breaks out into 3 basic categories. One is your check-in process when the vehicle first comes in. Your next is your blueprinting you're going to do with the vehicle. And then, of course, mapping of the vehicle. Your check-in process, and a lot of you guys do this in your shop already, you get the information from the consumer, you get their description of the accident, you tag the keys, you wash the vehicle for repairs, you get it ready to put it in to service. You also walk around the car with the customer, try and upsell. And then, of course, you put either windshield notes on a sticker. Really shouldn't write on windshields anymore. They find that a lot of the chips that happen to the windshields, that colored pen gets stuck in there. And on side glass, sometimes it doesn't like to come off, and it washes off if you wash the car. Best thing is to get the sticker. Most of your paint companies have some sort of sticker you guys can use for that. So the walk around, this is a Corvette that was hit where? Left front. Like a left front hit here. My damage analysis of this vehicle is going to start at this right rear. Why is that? Well, I want to find out where all that energy got deflected to and start in the least area of possible damage, then work my way back into the area of damage. I know where it's badly damaged. I know it's the left front area. So where is most of my estimate going to be? The left front. We all get busy throughout the day. We're going to miss things. So if I start in the opposite area, work my way back, less likely to miss the small things. Another thing you want to check is panel gaps as you walk around the vehicle. In this case, it's a 2-door vehicle, so you want to be able to catch and see how the doors open and close, how the windows close to the roof structure. Another thing I did here is I put my fingers between the wheel and the rocker panel to see how much room is in there. Now this is a quick check. You're not fixing the car, you're not doing measurements. But if I found that only 3 fingers fit on one side and 2 fingers fit on the other, what would you think? I got something wrong here. Do I need to do something else? Yeah, I'm verifying that the car has more damages visually and by tape measures than if it didn't. So I'm kind of trying to qualify or quantify why I'm going to put it on a 2-post lift and measure the car electronically. And then obviously my front area, I'm going to take care of my damages. Next, quick checks. Obviously a tram gauge is one of the issues you want to take a look at. So when you check in with a tram gauge, you have to understand the applied forces that were impacted on the vehicle. How is the vehicle hit and where'd the energy go? If I hit this car dead center, where's the energy going? Pretty much longitudinally along the center line of the vehicle. But if I go ahead and I take it from where Kevin is, Kevin, raise your hand. From where Kevin is, and I hit the car right where Kevin is, inward towards the center line and at or near a 45-degree angle, where's that collision energy going now? I'm sending it kind of like right where I am here, like Kevin's throwing me a football pass or something, or a baseball. It's coming this way. What happens to the car though? It's still going forward, right? Where does the rest of the car go? Well, if I hit it this way at the front, what does the back do? The back's going to move a different direction in the car. Could I cause damages in a different area than would be suspected in the front? Yes, I could get a switch there. So that's why you're going to understand the applied forces. Wheel position. Check the wheel position on the vehicle. You can't have wheelbase shorter on one side than another because you'll get a car that does what? Makes turns all day. Wheelbase. Close your panel operation. Check everything on that. Tape with tram gauge measurements. This, once again, as an estimator, this will take you 5 to 10 minutes to go around the car, open and close doors, check wheel position. You want to verify, is it a fast repair, or do I see something that jumps out at me and says, hey, wait a second, I better measure this car and see how badly damaged it is? Because how many guys, and I don't want to show of hands, but how many guys have actually had a car repaired in their shop or repaired a car and it went for a wheel alignment and it wouldn't take one? And it wasn't a suspension component that was bent. There was something bent in the car. And you're like, I didn't think it was that badly damaged. Well, let's not think anymore. Let's know what's damaged. Measuring for estimating, I've been saying this for years, is vital. You have to do it to be able to write a damage analysis report, or what you guys call estimating. This can be done on a 2-post lift, on certain frame machines. You can do it on the floor if you have enough room between the vehicles. You got an F-250, you can put this equipment on the floor and measure it. This vehicle is actually on basically on a flat surface right now, and it's not on the frame machine. I know the frame is sitting on top of it, but this Quick 42 is set up so that the center of it's lower than the sides, and basically the car's just driven up here. You've probably read a few articles in a couple of the magazines where shops are utilizing this machine to measure the car. If it needs a pull, they pull it right now, order the parts, put it outside, and wait for the parts to come in and put the parts on. The car's already pulled. Or if it just needs a quick pull and some repair, they do it, they get it out, and it's a shorter cycle time on that car. Here is a shop up in the Bronx that I was doing with, I think it was Tim, and we set this shop up. There's a 2-post lift, there's a Nissan Maxima on here, and you can see the ladder, which is underneath here, we'll show that in a few minutes, is on top of what? Plastic horses. I think the whole thing was $70 for the plastic horses at Home Depot. And it's just strapped on there, and we put the ladder on top of that, tied it down, and we were able to measure the entire bottom of the vehicle fairly easily to find out what was and wasn't damaged on the vehicle. We found there was suspension damage and not structural damage, which helped us out. So why pre-measure? Pre-measuring the vehicle gives you the ability to have documentation of what's damaged. How many guys have ever negotiated with an insurance company or talked to an insurance company that says there's 6 hours of repair or 6 hours of damage on there or 5 hours of damage? Can you prove that? It's your opinion, right? You're basing it on, well, this is what I could do it for and make enough money, all right? But wouldn't it be better to know what's there? How many guys have ever underestimated frame damage? Just give me a quick pull. I'll take 2 hours for it. Yeah, 2 hours set up, 2 hours pull it, no big deal. And then you find out when your tech starts working on it, the material doesn't want to move, or you find there's more damage than you thought beforehand. So let's know beforehand, before we even start. Triage diagnosis. We'll know now, does a car go in the frame machine? Can it go into fast track? Do I need suspension repairs before I even do structural repairs? What's wrong with the vehicle we need to know? Suspension diagnosis. This particular equipment, this Carolina Evo, will allow you to, will allow you to actually measure suspension components, do a comparison. You can't do a wheel alignment. It doesn't do a wheel alignment, but you can measure upper and lower control arms to find out if there's a variance between the left side and the right side of the vehicle. Evidence for negotiating. Some states you're allowed to negotiate the claim with the insurance company. Well, guess what? Instead of bickering back and forth, I need 3, I need 2, well, I'll give you 4, I can't pay you this amount. Instead of arguing that way, it's like, here's the amount of damage. This is how much time I've calculated I needed. And this program at the end of it actually shows you that you can put in the amount of millimeters that it's off, and you can type in what you feel the time is by breaking it out differently, which is, it prints out on the screen with the measurements. It looks nicer. Once again, it's not calculating it, you're doing it. Knowing where you are. You have to know where the car is before you can put it back to where it's supposed to be. EME 54 documentation. I'll explain the EME 54 in a minute. Hidden damage. How many guys have ever discovered damage when it gets on the frame machine? That could turn out to be a nightmare, right? Especially when you got to order parts. Because guess what? You just lost money on the job if the vehicle's sitting on the frame machine and you're waiting for parts. No car gets repaired until all parts are received. Then you can start the repairs. If you find out when it's on the frame machine, you've already lost your profit on that vehicle. Assistance in blueprinting. Also gives you evidence of repairs. I have my pre-measurements, I have my post-measurements. Another thing is better insurance relationships. What I mean by that, if an insurance company is predicting how many days it takes to repair a car, and you tell them, listen, that's way off because you're not counting holidays, weekends, anything, but this is how many days it's going to take me, and you stick to that, do you think maybe you'll have a little bit better of a relationship with them? I know they'll still argue the fact of their time's much shorter. And then, of course, structural realignment labor. How much time do we actually know it takes to pull a car until the guy actually pulls it? Well, guess what? After a few months of calculating and pre-measuring, you'll know how many millimeters certain cars are off, and you can depict how much time you actually need to charge for that. Advantages of triage. This is to the repair facility. Decrease cycle time. Remember, cycle time is how long it takes you to repair the car. Has nothing to do with rental time, in my opinion. Increase productivity. Now I'll put the car in the machine, it'll stay up there for a day or two, it comes off the machine and goes into production. How many shops are still operating with put the car in the frame machine, start repairing it, find other damages, leave it alone, go to something else, and then come back to it? Well, now you're tying up a pretty expensive piece of equipment for a few days. Increase space utilization. Well, now I won't have cars tying up my frame machine and other vehicles tying up the shop, because the car's going on the machine, staying on a specified amount of time, and then coming off again. Better customer satisfaction. Anyone had to lie to a customer ever in their life? Huh? Oh, parts are on back order. Really, I called up the dealer, and the dealer says that part's not on back order. All right, we've all been caught with that one at least once. So, decrease cost. You're not going to, remember, you got paid to do the car one time. Nothing worse than getting it off the frame machine, sending it to the wheel alignment. Wheel alignment says we can't do anything with it, and bringing it back and doing what? Putting it back on the machine and trying to tug things around incorrectly now to make it work. You didn't get paid for that second time around. And of course, increase profits, because we're not wasting money anymore. Advantages of triage to the insurance company. Well, parts ordering will be decreased, and supplements will be decreased because of suspension components. Number one reason for most supplements are suspension components. We don't know what's wrong. Makes the shop look more professional to the customer and the insurance company. The car's not laying in your shop for weeks at a time now. Decrease in supplements. Now, granted, you might have more supplements because you didn't come to an agreed price, but no more supplements of where they already know how much money you want to charge. They just didn't want to pay for it on the first one. You're not going to get the point now where they're writing for 35. You go, great, it's fantastic. You put it on the machine, you take the engine out, you find out the engine's cracked. You find out the firewall's damaged. You find out something's damaged someplace else. You're like, oh, wait a second. This is a problem now. Better judgment time. We have the solution for you. Before you go where you need to go, you first have to know where the vehicle is at. So triage pre-measuring can be done on a 2-post lift. We utilize Carolina Vision X3, which will help you with structural misalignment, calculate realignment time, create a printed document to be able to prove what's wrong with the vehicle and where it's at, and then create a repair plan for your technician. How many guys have ever read my article about the EME 54 theory? EME 54 theory basically states that when you go to repair a damaged vehicle, you have to take a look at the vehicle structurally. And basically, E, the first E of EME, stands for every collision damaged vehicle must be measured. I don't think there's an argument there, right? We should check it out. Tape measure, tram gauge, measure the car. Most, the M for EME, is most collision damaged vehicles will require some sort of structural realignment. Because if we go ahead and we check everything out visually and it fails, and we have to measure the car, most likely it's going to need some sort of pull, most of the time. And every collision damaged vehicle that's been on a frame machine or a structural realignment apparatus has to have this at the bare minimum when it comes off. What's the one thing they all have to have? Has nothing to do with body work. Close, very, very close. I can't say it needs a wheel alignment, but it needs a 4-wheel alignment check. Maybe the guy puts it on the Hunter machine or whatever alignment equipment he's using and doesn't turn a nut bolt or screw because it's back in position. Highly unlikely, but I can't say it has to have an alignment itself. It can have a wheel alignment check. Now, the 5 areas of measuring are the underbody of the vehicle, the underhood area, the side structure, the trunk hatch or glass opening areas, and then of course the suspension components. Now you might have to only do 2 or 3 of these. You may not have to do all of them. We're going to show you that in a second here on this vehicle. The 4 times in measuring, well, the first time I measure a car, is when I'm doing what? Setting up my vehicle to write my damage analysis report or my estimate. I hate the word estimate, but to write my damage analysis report. First time I get it on the frame machine, on a real frame machine, not just driven up on top of it, when I actually clamp it down, is because I'm changing my datum. My height and my length will stay the same. My height's going to change. So we have to go ahead and remeasure it. During my pulling and replacement of components, I'm going to measure the vehicle. And then, of course, my last time is when I'm finally done with the vehicle. So, for you guys out there, when you go to measure a car, to help your technicians out in your shop and avoid problems, because a lot of guys I see when I read their damage analysis reports or their measuring reports, the techs seem to get a little lazy. We all know we have to measure the center section, right? For any piece of frame equipment out there electronically, you've got to measure the center section. Then, let's say the car's hit the front, a lot of times the guy just measures what? In the front. And he forgets about what? Then you send it through a wheel line, and what happens? We wind up with something bent in the back because the center of the car stayed strong and the back of the car moved like we saw in the videos. So basically what we're saying at P&L is that bare minimum, you have to measure 12 spots under the car. Not 8, not 6, just lack of anything else, measure the 4 suspension cradle, measure the 4 in the back for the suspension, and measure, obviously you have to have the 4 in the middle to get your center line. That's it, bare minimum. Don't do anything else. And if you find something wacky, guess what? Then you got to do more measuring. But at least this will give you a better picture than just measuring 2 or 3 spots. With this system, we're going to see, I'm going to switch the camera in a second here so you can see theirs. It's going to give you a bullseye where you can pull to. It'll give you a location underneath the vehicle. So what you're going to, don't watch Nick. When Nick's underneath here, you can watch the screen up here. It'll show you where he is underneath the car, striking his points. And then you have about 20 to 30 measuring spots on this vehicle. Do you need all of them? No. You'll need a good percentage of them. Obviously, it's based on how much damage the vehicle actually sustained in a collision. And what's nice also is we did a damage analysis on the suspension of this car, and we'll let you know if we found something wrong or nothing wrong with the car. But this will allow you to measure suspension components. So we're going to move to a demo right now on the analysis. Let me just switch this out. Give me a second. And I'm going to introduce Nick, or who's doing it? Nick or Todd? Okay. I'm going to introduce you guys to, there we go, to Nick from Carolina. What's that there? What's that with that? This vehicle here is a, what is it, 11?
I think it's an 09 Passat.
09? This is an 09 Passat. I don't want you guys to walk around it now. I'm going to describe it. You can look at it afterwards. The car has a very light hit to the hood. Also, when we opened up the hood and removed the grille, we found that the plastic rad support is damaged. It's cracked. It needs a new one. The bumper absorber has some deformities to it. I didn't pull off this absorber to see if the reinforcement's damaged, but there's a little bit of marking to the reinforcement back here. That's basically all the damage. I believe all the doors opened and closed properly, right, Nick? All the doors opened and closed properly, and the wheels look to be in proper position by quick checks with just our eyes and some quick measurements. So basically, where's our damage on this car? I would say probably from here forward. You guys can look at this afterwards, but from here forward. So is this car a candidate to have measurements done to it? Or is this just going to be replace the rad support, replace the hood?
Fast track.
Fast track. Okay, I got a guy who says fast track. Anybody else? What do you think? Do you think we have an issue with this vehicle? We have only damage to the hood, cracked rad support, a cracked foam absorber, and we have a little mark to the reinforcement that may or may not require replacement. Seems like a fast track car, right? Change the hood, change the rad support, paint the nose, and that's it. Do we need to measure this car? All the doors are in the right spot. We open and close them. The gaps look good. The wheel positions, by a couple of quick checks, look good. So what do you think? Normally this car would do what? I'm going to ride it on the floor in my shop. I'm going to bring it in the shop. I'm going to fix it and get it out. Does anyone think we found a problem with this car? I hope so. Otherwise I kind of like wasted the whole morning, right? We're going to see in a second here. We're bringing up this video now. I'm going to turn it over to Nick to explain what he's going to do with this car. You might have to talk up.
We're going to measure it. We're just going to cut a center line, go up to kind of where the damage is, and like Larry said, recheck it. Let's see if there's any damage. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and start a new work order.
Nick, you gotta yell. Nobody can hear you.
You want me to do it for you?
Yeah.
All right, what Nick is doing is he's starting a new work order on the program. All right, so he's going to open up his program. He's going to select the vehicle. Hey guys, look, we preset some of this up already to save some time. It's a short little program here. So he's going to open up his vehicle by selecting it. It's also going to give you some information on if you had to set clamps up on the vehicle, which we're not in this particular case. And it gives you a photo of the vehicle so you can see it. You can fill out your normal information up at the top, you know, for RO number, person's name, claim number, stuff like that. You have to pick if the engine's in or out. In this case, the engine's in the car, so we're going to pick in. We have to orientate the arm. You got it, Todd? Okay. When this comes up, you have to orientate the arm so it recognizes. It's all Bluetooth, there's no wires. So you got to orientate the arm for those who aren't familiar with it. You want to see a full demo on it, see it after class. I'm not going to explain the whole process. So once the arm wakes up, it's going to give you this screen. And this screen here basically is showing you what I told you about your 30 measuring points. You have to strike your center line. So what Nick's going to do is, with Todd's help, is they're going to strike a center line in this vehicle. There's a process to follow. We're starting at this point back over here, which is giving us a little picture of it. So they're going to go ahead and do this now. Generally in a shop, this takes about, by the time you get it up on top of the machine and you get it ready to measure, you can get this done fairly rapidly, within an hour, let's say. You can get really good at it. You can get it down to a shorter period of time. The noise you're hearing is the machine saying you found the right spot, I checked the measurement. The last measurement they're going to take, listen, you're going to hear a difference in sound. Gives you a cheer. Now when you're under the machine or over here, you don't have to look at the screen. The mouse is on the arm. Another nice feature, which we're not going to show you now, but they have it on the iPhone application. So your tech can hold an iPhone under the car and actually see the screen. Another one of the guys, Tim, actually did a PC anywhere with an iPad and was actually able to see the screen and control it from a separate pad if you wanted to. There's other options for that for triage area. So Nick's going to grab some pictures of this area right now, and he's grabbing some measurements underneath. And as he moves around, you can see it'll show you where you are over here. And on this area, it's showing you the actual picture of what you're actually measuring. So Nick wants to grab a couple of measurements. Now, the machine is set up for plus or minus 3 millimeters on the structure of the car. Now, when a measurement comes up good, or within parameters, it's black, and it's a positive number. But notice that we have a bunch of red areas on this car, a bunch of negatives. What do we got going on here? Remember, it's length, width, height, and height. So it's telling me right now, at those two areas for width, I'm -5. So it's in towards the center line. On the other side, it's telling me it's +4 and +5 from the center line going outward. So what happened to this car? We have technically what? A little sway going on. Although the car looks like what? Nothing wrong with it. And once again, when we're done with class, I'll still be here. We can go over the car more in depthly. I just don't want to take everyone's time because it's supposed to be a short thing, just an awareness type of thing. But you'll see the hood lines are not off. It looks okay. Remember, a millimeter is what? The thickness of 1 dime primarily. Primarily my damage is where? In the front. Does this car have to go on a structural realignment apparatus? Yes or no? Did I prove it to you? Would 99% of the time, would any shop put this car on a machine without measuring it? No. You wouldn't know. And you know what's going to happen is, I'll bet you money that it may take a wheel alignment. But what's going to happen 6 months down the road, 8 months down the road? You're going to have an improper wearing of the tires. It's going to start causing drivability issues because the car's not right. It's off. You might even get slight dog tracking on the car because they're going to offset the wheel alignment. I'm going to turn it back over to Nick right now. What do we got?
We have a slight sway here, and what I didn't go ahead and measure every point. I'm just trying to grab a couple quick ones, went right to where the damage, and that's enough to say, okay, we want to look at this a little further. And like Larry was talking about with, you know, if this was a printout that I'm going to go ahead and kind of hand over to the office, I'd get a couple more points in the middle of the car, a couple points in the rear of the car, and you'll show in this scenario that there is not damage to those points. So.
Well, I have another thing I want to show you guys before we go to suspension and before I finish up my last 2 screens in the PowerPoint. What happens if I have an insurance adjuster in the shop or an estimator as a technician that I have to show him something? Bring up the bar graph. And I want to show him visually what's damaged on the car. What's nice about this, once you get your measurements in, you can bring up this bar graph picture. And what you can do is you can bring up the magnification of it by sliding this arm up at the top, back and forth. By sliding this. And notice, what do we have going on here for the picture? There's really not a lot here. But if Nick increases it, just to exaggerate it, notice what happens. What do I have? See how these are all over to this side and these start going out? And notice it's off to the center line. What do I have now? I have sway in the front. Does this picture pretty much indicate it easily to somebody who doesn't know collision damage, who doesn't understand collision damage? Once again, it's another negotiating or proof tool you can use. And this goes through pretty rapidly. Now, do we think we have suspension damage at all? What do you guys think? Okay, Nick did a measurement of it, and if you want to see the measurement done again later on, he'll have the wheel off, he'll have it all set up. You're welcome to come back here afterwards. Nick had already did this pre-measurement. Once again, we are constrained by time. And here's some of the measurements that we have. Each one of these is giving you a point as it bounces around to measure to the vehicle. And it'll give you a measurement line up over here. You can see from point 1 to point 2, I have 296, so I'm measuring the front area length of the control arm to the ball joint. Does everyone see that? The mounting area in the back to the length of the ball joint. It's telling me it's 296 on the left side. It's telling me the right side's 302. Generally, we're plus or minus 5 millimeter on suspension parts. Remember, it's comparison. We're off by 1 millimeter. Do I have a problem? I got a control arm that's actually longer by 1 millimeter than the other side. So there's something to look at there and see what's going on with it. Another thing we found, 1 to 3 is the opposite side. That's pretty much good. But then I get over here to number 4, which is the length of the top of the strut to the bottom of the ball joint. It's telling me one side is 682 to 688. It's off by 6. I have 2 things wrong with, so far, the left side to the right side, both of them being on the right side. Do I got a problem? Maybe. I'm starting to build my proof. Can you see how this goes? If one thing was off, I would tell you probably nothing wrong with the control arm. But I got a control arm problem, I got a height problem with my suspension. Now, if I bounce down and I get down here to this area here, I got a big problem. We're measuring 3 to 4, which is the back, rear lower control arm mounting area to the top of the strut tower. It's telling me it's off by 7 millimeters. I have 3 things wrong on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side of the car versus the left-hand side. Do I think I have a problem? I think I do. I got something wrong with my suspension. So I know it needs further inspection and investigation. See how that goes? See the importance of measuring? Now, how many guys thought there was nothing wrong with this car? You looked at it, it's got light damage, it might be a fast track car. How many problems could have occurred if we didn't measure this car? would have brought it in, went right to the body department, would have changed the hood, the rad support, would have painted it, would have sent it for a wheel alignment because we got paid for one, right? Because the car get in the front. Or maybe we would, then 6 months down the road, the customer comes back and their tires are all bald, and they want to complain to you and say, oh, there's something wrong. And what are you going to tell them? Not part of the accident. You don't drive right, you didn't rotate your tires, and guess what? You'd be dead wrong. Dead wrong you'd be, because we didn't know any better. So hopefully what we're trying to do here is wake ourselves up to it. Okay, good. If you guys want, after we're done here, I'll go more in depth in a smaller group if you'd like. I'm just going to finish up here with my last screen, just to help you guys out. We'll be done. All right, blueprinting. After we're done measuring our car, we're going to want to blueprint the vehicle. Now, blueprinting, the reason we're going to do this is that an estimate is only an approximated price. It's a tentative price. It's not an accurate description of what's wrong with the car. Along with disassembly and the measuring, I can make an accurate repair plan to what needs to be done. So the blueprinting must determine all necessary parts have been identified. Determination of structural damage, we determine the structural damage to the vehicle. You also want to ensure that the labor times are accurate in your repair report. You also want to determine all parts are listed. So you're going to check with what? All data, the OEM, something like that, to make sure you're ordering all your additional nuts, bolts, screws, clips, retainers, rivets, adhesives. Also, all questions have been answered. Looking at this vehicle now, if I gave you my estimate, would you be able to answer all the questions on my estimate if someone asked you about it? Why? Because I visually gave you a picture of what's wrong with the car, so now you're able better to explain what's wrong with the vehicle. And of course, you have your documentation. Mapping of the vehicle. If you walk up to this Audi A8, do you know what needs to be done to it? All of your technicians, right, at one time or another, could you walk up to this car and know what's getting done to it? Why? Because I did what to it? I mapped it. So basically, I don't have the technician walking in the office, standing there while I'm on the phone with his hands in his pockets, waiting for me to get off the phone. He could be out in the shop working on the car, because what? The car's written up. He knows what's wrong with it. He knows what he has to do. And the next car he has to do, guess what? It looks the same way. So I don't have to, I can walk around the shop now and say what needs to be done to the vehicle. No brainers. As we finish up, understand what the vehicle was designed to do in a collision event and how it's going to react. That's very important. Also, check with the OEM first. Remember, the OEM sets the standard. You cannot make standards up. The guy who made the vehicle makes the standard. I do not believe in making repair standards. It's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard of in my life. Unless none exist. The manufacturer doesn't have one, someone needs to do something that the manufacturer won't. But how many guys know of manufacturers without repair standards or procedures for their cars? I really know of only two, Hyundai and Kia. The rest all have procedures for it. You may have no business. What do I mean by you may have no business? You may have no business fixing that car. Anyone ever get involved in a car that you should have never touched to begin with? Anybody want an Audi A8 in their shop? You want to play around with that car? All aluminum? How about, oh, I'll give you one better. How about an S-Class Mercedes-Benz? Those who were in my class last night learned that the quarter panel goes on in a very strange way. Or a BMW. Another quarter panel that goes on in a very different manner. So once again, know what you can do. Learn your limitations. Learn when you've run out of talent before the talent gets you. And you don't want to have that happen to you. It can get expensive. Kink versus bend rule may not apply. Remember years ago, if it's kinked, less than 90 degrees, you have to replace it. If it's bent, it's probably repairable. That doesn't hold true anymore. Even iCar said that back in 2007, that kink versus bend may not apply due to the type of steel substrate or the type of material being used. If you don't know what's wrong with the material or what type of material, treat all high-strength steel as advanced steel until you can prove it. Which means no heat, guys. Anyone who has a torch in your shop, you're promoting bad repairs from your technicians. Throw your torches out. You do not need them. There's no reason to have a torch in a shop. None. whatsoever. Any reason you want to give me, I'll show you a reason not to have a torch. Unless you're a customizing shop that's working on 1950s cars and you're doing heat shrinking or hammer welding, you don't need a torch. Think of the function of the part. Is the part meant to be structural? Is it meant to be sacrificial? Is it meant to be a soft part that's meant to have some resiliency to it? Is it meant for the longevity of the part of the vehicle? Once again, know what the part's function is, helps you out, understand better what needs to be done. Never assume anything. Always get proof. We assumed this car was not damaged, am I correct? We assumed it was okay. Did we find something? We found a little something, yes. And of course, think ahead. And if you ever have a question, feel free to get in touch with me. I can always help you find out where a procedure might be or guide your way to it. If anyone has any questions, guys from Carolina or myself will be here. If you guys need a business card or something, I appreciate your time. Please say thank you to AASP New Jersey for actually sponsoring this. Anybody who wants to talk to people from Collision Hub, you're more than welcome to. Thank you guys, I appreciate it.